IULs were born after VULs pretty much exploded during the Great Recession as this vehicle that gives you upside of the market, but a floor where you can never lose like you would in a VUL. IULs have been missold, have been literally made the industry standard across so many of these companies because of one reason: they pay the highest commission. But what you don't understand is what's going to catch up with you many years later in your life, well after that advisor has moved on.
They're always comparing an IUL to like 401k, tax-free income. That's really why they're buying it. They're not buying it for the life insurance.
IUL, you didn't fail buying the IUL. You were destined to fail because that product failed you. What's going on, everybody? Chris Naugle back with the Money School podcast. And on this podcast, we talk about one thing and one thing only, and that is your money and how to take back control of that money. And today we're going to bring on the most amazing guest, the IUL Exposer. And you know, a lot of people, if I told them who I was bringing on, be like, don't bring him on, don't bring him on. He hates whole life. He doesn't like what you guys do. He doesn't like infinite banking. But you know what? I've gotten to know him. He's agnostic to products. He doesn't care what product it is. He cares when it's sold to solve the wrong problem or in the wrong fashion. And that's what we're going to get into today. We're going to talk about buy, term, invest the difference, why that's his chosen preferred method. We're going to talk about the IBC concept and whole life insurance and specially designed whole life. But we're really going to dive into IULs and the major issues that they are creating in the marketplace. Jonathan, welcome to the show. We are honored to have the IUL Exposer in the house.
Man, I am fired up. Thank you so much for the introduction. You hyped me up more than I needed to be, man. It's actually a pleasure to be chatting with you. I've watched all your content probably for the last year and a half, and you're one of the people that I've learned infinite banking because that's not what I see. I see something completely different. I'm like, oh, that's whole life. I'm like, wow. I've done about 4,000 policy reviews, Chris, over the last 18 months. Guess how many infinite banking policies I've actually come across? Just out of 4,000, how many do you think I've come across?
1,000?
Two. Lafayette, through Lafayette. And that's what my introduction to Lafayette, because you don't really on your channel talk about companies, but I started the baby blue coloring, right? I'm like, this is the exact same stuff. And then I go, oh, he's using Lafayette. So yeah, two, maybe three, but yeah, I can totally count on one hand where I've come across infinite banking where there's 90+% or 85% cash value year one. I'm like, got it. And funny enough, those are the ones I didn't replace.
But here's an interesting thing, Jonathan. Thank you so much for speaking positively. And I'm glad you only came across two, but there is a lot of people out there doing IBC a disservice and doing it completely wrong to maximize their commissions. And I'd be remiss in this episode if we don't cover that, because listen, like I talk whole life, we use only whole life, especially designed whole life. But you know, I've seen so many bad whole life policies designed for IBC. I've seen them done. And, you know, when I see them, it gives me that sick feeling in my gut, but it doesn't even hold the bag at all compared to IUL and how many bad ones. Now, Jonathan, I got to tell you, just last week, this guy who was on one of our webinars sent me an email after, and he said, hey, listen, you know, I'd love you. You said you'd review some policies. I've got two policies. One's an IUL, one's a whole life designed for IBC. Like, I'm completely happy with them. I love my agent, blah, blah, blah. But I'd love to get your opinion on it. I'm like, oh, IUL, here we go. Send them over. So he did. And the one was $1 million premium. And the other one was like, I think 100,000 per year into the whole life. So, you know, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a cakewalk. So I dive into it. I'm looking through the IUL and like, I'm just not seeing what I normally do. I'm seeing a policy that was designed and then, you know, it had the cash value, which I know they all have the cash value. And then it had the surrender value, which was in the 80% range. And I'm like, wow, this person did a good job. But this isn't really what I'm always looking for. Because look, you can illustrate anything. The hypotheticals are the hypotheticals. So I look up to the column you already know, and I look at the hypothetical interest rate projected, 3.8%. I'm like, no way. This is the first and only. And you said you've seen two IBC policies. I've seen hundreds upon hundreds. Here are just some of the many IUL policies that I've seen in my time. And I've never, ever in the hundreds I've looked at seen one where somebody showed a hypothetical rate of 3.8 and they built it so that it reduced out their commission so that client had those. It was the first. So I have to give some credit to that girl, that agent that put that together. And I said that to the guy. I said, kudos to her. The whole life wasn't designed great, but it wasn't terrible. So I gave him just a glowing review. I said, I think the whole life could have been a little better, but both are the same company. So maybe for simplicities, I said, listen, the juice is worth the squeeze. And she did a really good job. You should be very happy to be working with an agent like this. I've never said that.
Can't say the same necessarily for IUL whole life. I could say that, right, that I've come across, because usually they're doing like 6-7%. They're doing the maximum illustrated rate. I come across one guy that he says that he only illustrates at 4%, because it doesn't look sexy, because he doesn't want to show 6.5, 7%. That just will never happen. Like nobody would ever get that linear, especially linear. So it's a joke. But yeah,
Well, I think we're going to get into that.
Yeah, that's shocking, man. 3 point.
Yeah, it's crazy. It was the first and only I've ever seen like that. But you know what? Let's do a service, because a lot of my audience, maybe they've seen you on TikTok and various social channels. You're really big. You're doing, honestly, almost God's work out there, because there's very few people. Listen, folks. When you look at people that are successful and you look at why they're successful, I'll give you one of the biggest things you look for. Look for the person that's out there giving, just giving and giving and giving and giving with nothing in return. Okay. That's the person that's successful. And I know the majority of the people out there would say, no, there's no way. I'm telling you, it's a universal law. That is the way. And that is what he does. I see his videos all the time. He brought me on. It was kind of funny. He brought me on one of his lives the other day, and it was kind of like, isn't Chris a whole life guy on your channel? It was super fun, but we went back and forth. But like, you're out there just helping people. You're doing reviews. You're slammed. So thank you for your time today. But how did you come to this place where you are out there giving people honest advice, reviewing their policies, getting attorneys involved where needed to get people back the money that they'd never in a million years have a chance of getting if they didn't meet someone like you? How did you get here?
That's a funny story. So I never replace a policy without reviewing it. I never, ever, 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 just because I just think that's unfair. You with me? So clients get busy, clients get super busy. So I just couldn't get her policy. She didn't get her policy. We needed a copy. So we called Transamerica. She goes, Jonathan, can you just call for me? And I'm like, okay. So we got her on three-way, and I just started asking questions. That's how it started. And then as I'm asking, like the client or the agent on the phone was just telling me everything. And that's when the light bulb went on. I'm like, so we finished the call, and I asked her, can we just call back? And can I record this? That's how it started. It was an accident. And then I posted it on TikTok. I wake up the next day, I think I was like 500,000 views. I'm like, what the heck just happened? That's literally what happened. So then people, can you call my company? So it wasn't like a strict, like I planned on this. It was just by accident. The next thing you know, State Farm, and then boom. And I'm like, I don't know if this is like ethical, but I'm gonna keep doing it because I was just seeing. So I've been licensed since 2012. Okay. So from 2012 to 18 months ago, I think I've come across called maybe 500 cash value life insurance policies. And the most I've ever seen was like $300. That was my career. It was just all brand new business, just helping the community. Over the last 18 months, 4,000 policy reviews, right? And I'm talking the average premiums are 1,000. 98%, I would say, are IUL. Whole life is not sold, by the way. I promise you, man. Nobody's selling whole life. Nobody. That's why I don't really.
They don't pay the commission that IULs do.
Right. Yeah, the IULs are. This is what's sold. It's IUL Index Universal Life, followed by maybe some term. I don't see a whole life a lot, man. It's very rare. So that's why I tell you, out of all those 4,000 policy reviews, only 2 of them are true infinite banking. It kind of threw me off. I'm like, all right, okay, I understand where you guys are going from this. So then that's what happened, and then I was telling people, because I didn't even know you can get refunds. I didn't know this. Everything has happened by accident. Okay. So I was just telling people, don't cancel it. Just let the surrender value pay for the premium. So at least you have kind of free insurance, I guess you would say, instead of just losing it. All right. Just let it lapse on itself. We'll replace it. Then I replaced the policy for, he was a deputy. That's what he was. He was mad. He had like dumped in like 40,000 into this IUL. And I felt hopeless. I couldn't help him. Like, okay, I replaced the policy, but he didn't let it go because there's no way we can get the money. I'm like, nah, 7,000 surrender value. Like, it's a $33,000, whatever the loss was. So I didn't hear from him. We helped him out, switch his policy out. Like 2 months later, he calls me. And I'm like, "Yeah, what's up?" He goes, "I got my money back." I'm like, and I'm thinking the surrender value.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, "All right, well, the 7,000? No, 40,000, right? Or whatever it was." I go, "How did you do that?" He goes, I threatened them." Like, who did you threaten? I go, "Give me the letter. I need everything." So I got that, and then we just improved on it, and then we built a whole team around that to boom, kind of start our dispute process. It wasn't even me that got the money. That was the client, and then one after another, and we just to where we're at now. And now we're almost at $1 million in refunds. And to me, that's a lot because these
That
are,
is a lot of money. That's $1 million taken from these families that now can pay bills, can pay credit cards off, that
uh,
can put a better life in front of them.
yeah. So that's how that happened. And now to come to find out there's like attorneys. So I don't work with an attorney or anything. We just have a team behind us. But there's like attorneys that this is all they do. They're dedicated to just IUL people. Like I feel bad for them. I don't feel bad, but because they shouldn't be doing this to them. But there's attorneys that they dedicated their entire practice to suing IULs, IUL agents, and they pack life, or I don't know if I could say that right. IUL companies.
Sure. If it's factual, you can say it.
Yeah, yeah. So Pack Life, Transamerica, all these nationwide. I mean, you start seeing them like if this product was so incredible, like you say it is, how come it's the number one litigated product in the insurance industry? So you don't see any litigations with whole life. You don't
And
see any
attorneys,
litigation.
just for the record, what you're saying, attorneys, like you call them ambulance chasers, whatever, but those kind of attorneys, they only chase winners. They don't waste time with things they don't think they can win because there's just too many other things they can win. So like when he's saying that, like these attorneys are on to IUL agents and IUL companies because it's easy. They're getting paid. They're making money doing it. That's why attorneys do what they do.
And so when I started learning that, I didn't realize like because I'm middle income, middle family, like $500 is a stretch for these guys. People are dumping in hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm like, my mouth dry. I didn't realize how many people are really utilizing life insurance in a different way other than death benefit. That's not my book of best, my clientele, none of that. It's just $80,000 incomers and $100,000 incomers, that middle income. That's what I really work with. So when I saw that, it was mind boggling. It's crazy.
So let's get in the weeds a little bit. And you've been in this business a while. So I remember back, early 2000s when I got into the career, I was at New York Life. And one of the big things I did and was very successful with is back then, this is when interest rates cycle, right? They're usually a 5 to 7 year cycle. It's called the short-term rate cycle. But what had happened is we had gone from a high interest rate cycle when I came in, like after the dot-com crash, and the rates were they were trending down. Now, back during high interest rates, pre-dot-com, universal life policies, the IULs, I don't even think were around then. They hadn't even been dreamt up, but universal life policies were sold. They were called Target Life. And these things were the hottest thing on the market. Even when I joined New York Life, like the big product was a UL accumulator. Now, right in there, that's a sexy name. I want to accumulate. It had a guaranteed, or say it had a floor of, I can't remember what the floor was, 1 or 2%, and you made 4.75% or something back then. That was attractive. And I remember I saw that product and I'm like, hey, that's going to be my first policy. So I put money into my first policy. It was a UL accumulator. Now, here's what happened. That UL accumulator, the rate on it went down and down and down and down. So the illustration that I sold myself, the policy, was not the policy that it was 10 years later. Because I ended up 1035 exchanging it after the surrender into, a properly designed whole life. But the real story wasn't my policy, was the appointments I would go out on. I was on this task force, if you will, where we would get a list of all the people who had target life policies that were going to lapse in the next 10 years. So I would go out and I would tell these people, hey, your policy, it's in danger. We either have to increase premium, and sometimes it was doubling the premium to maintain this death benefit. But I thought nothing of it. I'm like, great, these are great leads. I get in front of people. Wow, these people actually want to talk about their policy and do a review because there's an issue. So they want me to come out. When I got out to these families' homes, they were the people you're talking about, middle America, people struggling just to keep the roof over their head, widows who had a policy for their children and they were barely hanging on to it at the current $100 or $80 a month. And then I had to sit there and tell them that If you continue to fund this at $80, the policy will be dead and you will get nothing in 5 years. And the only thing we can do is we can, do a replacement of this and do a single premium, or we had a couple different options that we did with this task force. It was very sad to see because these people were completely blindsided. Most of these people had a response like, wait a second, this thing was supposed to have like so much cash value. I was able to take from it for retirement. And you're telling me it's literally going to be gone, like gone. I'm going to get nothing. Yeah, I'm sorry. Now, I did well replacing those policies back then into something more stable, but I saw the truth behind ULs. You see, we're going to get into a lot on this podcast today, but what you're going to find out is an illustration doesn't mean a whole lot. And an illustration with a hypothetical means even less. So later in my career, I was introduced to VULs, variable universal life, to which back then I was the new registered rep. Because you actually, funny thing, and you know this, you actually had to have a securities license. You had to have a 6 and 63 or 6 and 65 to be able to sell VULs, unlike IULs, which we got to cover that. The VULs, I sold a bunch of those. Fast forward, the Great Recession hits 2008. My VUL plummets. I get letters saying that the policy is going to lapse because, I had loans on it and the cash value was actually taking such a big hit because of the investment performance that it was going to be an insolvent policy unless I put more. New York Life froze them all and held them until after the recession, which saved the policy. But the whole thing is that policy was never sold to anyone saying that there's a possibility that this could lapse if we go into a recession. And it happened very quickly. Now what the conversation is going to be is the next iteration of what we just said. Universal Lives, which came about in the 80s, and they literally bastardized whole life. Like, I can't remember the guy with the Pintos, but whatever. Do you remember his name? The guy that like exposed the Pintos and came out and said that whole life isn't transparent. It'll come to me. But like ULs came out then, but that was a high interest rate cycle, a high interest rate market. So they were sold on the current interest rate, which isn't the interest rate that was happening in the future. So IULs were born after VULs pretty much exploded during the Great Recession as this vehicle that gives you upside of the market, but a floor where you can never lose like you would in a VUL. Sounds great, right? Oh, wow, you took a product that people like, they could overfund, they could build as a supplemental retirement plan, but now you fix the problem and there's no downside risk, or so they say. IULs have been missold, have been literally made the industry standard across so many of these companies because of one reason: they pay the highest commission. No ifs, no ands, or no buts about it. They absolutely are the highest commissioned life insurance you can sell. Hence why so many people sell them. Hence why your broker, your advisor, and everybody, this is what they want to sell you. Don't make any two ways about it. But what you don't understand is what's going to catch up with you many years later in your life, well after that advisor has moved on, has left, because the advisor's life cycle is usually a relatively short one, especially these new agents hawking IULs. They're in the business less than 3 years. They're gone. But you're left with something that's for your entire life that, I'm sorry, most will never make the journey with you. Jonathan has made a career out of exposing this, hence the name of his company, IUL Exposer. Jonathan, real quick, how can people learn about your company and follow you? I know your TikTok and everything else, but where do they go?
Yeah. So Life Insurance Refunds is the Instagram and TikTok handle, or you can go to IULexposer.com, right? I just literally IULexposer.com. And then you can reach out
I just wanted to get that out because I know at this point, we're going to get into some things here. They're going to be hard for some of you to hear. I promise you. Some of you are going to be told things that you're going to be like, no, there's no way. But I promise you, what you're going to hear is the truth and the whole truth and nothing but, however they say it, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So Jonathan, why is it that IULs are so missold? Like, what the heck went wrong here?
Well, they're sexy on paper, man. Right?
Sure
the story. I think if we talk about fear, we play into people's emotions. Nobody likes to lose money, right? Everybody wants to have a straight line to retirement. People want to invest without risk. If you take out the losses, the risk, it's a very attractive way to get people to give you more money. If you could illustrate something that shows something very promising, I mean, it's that you could take a brand new agent, Chris, teach them some catchphrases, some punchlines, and they can go sell it to anybody. And you put an illustration in front of them, Because I think a lot of times people, these agents especially, they think that that illustration's absolute, like that's going to
You
happen.
mean these things here?
Yeah, yeah, that one. Like they think that's reality. I'm like, bro, there's no chance that that is ever going to happen. Because I come across them. I would say 4,000 policy reviews is probably a lot. It's enough for me to be convinced that these things aren't going to work. Um, so
But you're not the only one saying that they're not going to work. I have some papers here of regulating agencies that have gone in and completely exposed exactly what you're talking about. And I don't really want to show these because they got the company's name, so I'm gonna hold them. But they're all right here, and you can kind of see they're all highlighted, and all this stuff is just the regulator paperwork and the articles that have come out warning the public about these products.
yeah. So you mentioned something earlier. 95% or over 90% of life agents won't renew their license.
Yeah,
Right?
that's the stat.
That's a stat. So it's unfortunate because one, they're not even being trained correctly, what max funded, properly structured is. So they're going to sell you something, make a quick commission, but yet you're the client left with this product that's going to devastate you financially, long range, especially if this is your only source of like savings,
The,
SaaS.
the other thing that's interesting is, I've been in this business now, well, since '03, so 20 plus years. Okay, we're doing the math, and I look at a lot of whole life illustrations. I look at a lot of whole life contracts, and I look at a lot of term contracts. They're so simple, like a whole life or a term contract to the client. A client, even an uneducated client, could read through the entire term contract, the entire whole life contract, and really have very few questions. Like, well, what does this thing mean? What is this, op thing or this P-way thing? What is that? But for the most part, you're going to get through the whole thing because they're relatively simple and short, and you're going to understand to the pretty strong level what you just bought. When you get an IUL contract or even the illustration, dude, good luck getting through the first couple paragraphs without scratching your head being like, I don't have the slightest clue what they're talking about. And you're not going to read the rest. And it's literally 2 to 3 times thicker than a term or a whole life contract. Why
You
would
know,
they
it's
need
crazy.
so much
Yeah.
language? Go ahead, talk about that.
It's crazy because like I'll do a policy review. I go, do you know what any of this means? And I'll go to like to the cap rates and what the guaranteed and the current mean. And do you know what any of this stuff means? They go, not one person has been able, like a client, has been able to educate me as if they were trying to sell it to me. I'm like, so you can't educate me on what you have. This is what your financial future is based off of. Probably a red flag. If you can't explain your investing philosophy here, I think we're in some trouble. Yeah.
But hold on. Here's what they can very well explain to you. Well, they said it was guaranteed to never lose money. They said I'm getting a rate of 6.25%. That's what this one, I probably should cover that, but that's what this one shows. 6.25%. And I'm going to be able to draw whatever, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 a year when I hit retirement. Like what do you mean that that's not going to happen?
Yeah. I'll even take it a step further. This is what they say a lot, that I'm going to get stock market like returns. That's literally what they say. They think they're actually going to get stock market like returns, and I'm like, oh yeah, this
Well,
is
but
not.
but it's based on they're participating in the S&P. How are they not going to get stock market like or S&P like returns? Like, come on, that's what it is. It's participating in the S&P 500, right?
That's what they think. The agent really sold them on that concept of you're going to be investing in the market, and then I break it down, and they're just discombobulated after, I guess you would say. It's just, they're just shook. I'm like, I'm sorry, man. They sold you life insurance. It has maybe some cash value if you're lucky. If you're
But
lucky, it's gonna.
let's put a pin in this real quick, and I want to transition over to a little different thing. Like, what a beautiful product for the insurance company. I'm gonna take my hat and I'm gonna put my insurance company hat on. What a beautiful engineered piece of contract or piece of product that we have created for the insurance company. I mean, the insurance company can't lose. Basically, we're going to go out there and we're going to launch a product that every year gets more expensive for the client. So the older the client gets, the more expensive the internal costs get. So therefore, like, listen, like, guys, we make the most amount of money when people lapse their policy because we don't have to pay a death benefit. Like, that increasing cost of insurance is going to put a really, really solid chance that we're gonna have these things lapse out because they're not gonna perform. They're gonna lapse. I mean, now I know there's some protections against that, but like I'm just kind of doing this. And also, we're going to basically tie this to a hypothetical return that we have to guarantee nothing on, because basically we're going to tie it to an index that's going to go up, down. So we can sit there and say, oh, it could earn up to this, or unlimited. If you get rid of the cap, you got an unlimited cap, and we're going to put a floor, and we're going to tell them, hey, you can't lose money down here. And all we're going to do is we're going to go out and we're going to buy options or derivatives that are going to protect our downside, but we're not going to pay for any of this. The client's going to pay for all this stuff. Like, brilliant job to the engineers that built these policies. So now let's come back over to our world where we're dealing with the client, the person who bought this policy and why they bought it. Jonathan, from what you see, why are people buying these products? What is it that they like outside of the sexiness of the growth and the return?
I think it's
How are they
all.
being sold?
Yeah, I feel that what I come across a lot is it's a two-in-one special, kind of.
Oh,
I got cash value, I got some life insurance, I could borrow from it. The living benefit aspect of it, like it's like the Swiss are they 20 different benefits,
sorry.
all in one. Like this is what I hear. Yeah, I have a retirement plan for life, and I can borrow my money because they're always comparing an IUL to like a Roth IRA or 401k, tax-free income. That's really why they're buying it. They're not buying it for the life insurance. The life insurance is like more second or third, right, on the list of the benefits. It's always the loans and the tax-free income. They never truly buy it for the life insurance. So it's more for retirement. They're literally thinking they're buying a retirement account.
Wow.
That can never lose money. That can never lose money. That's what's happening.
Never lose money. All right. Well, I've got a couple of them here, but I want to get deeper into the mechanics. Like this one here. This is a great one. Person puts $100,000 a year in for 5 years, and then they never have to put another dollar into the policy. Well, that ain't so bad, right? If you got 100 grand and you put it into this policy, you got 5 years in, and this thing just shows no chance you're going to have to put money into this. But then down here in the important part on the illustration, it says this illustration, not a contract. This illustration assumes that the current illustrated non-guaranteed element will remain unchanged for all the years shown. So hold on, let's pause there. Initial illustrated interest rate, 4.8%. So what this is basically saying is that you'd have to earn 6.48% every single year for the rest of your life, and it's indexed to the S&P 500 100% participation. Then it goes on to say, and hold on, I'll get to this, and I want you to comment on this. Right here, big bold letters. This is not likely to occur. And actual results may be more or less favorable than those shown. Administrative and insurance charges are deductible are deducted each month, regardless of whether the premium outlays are made. Oh, so costs don't stop when I stop putting premiums in? Okay. Oh, don't forget, they go up every single year. If the death benefit guarantee agreement is not in effect and depending upon actual policy experience, the owner may need to increase premium payments to maintain coverage for the desired duration. Any policy loans, very important, any policy loans, partial surrenders will affect policy values and may require additional premiums to avoid policy termination. I understood that. I don't think many people read that. I don't think the agent's explaining that. There's no way they are, because it literally just told you this is not likely to occur.
Correct. Because if they did, no one would buy it.
Just crazy. And every illustration says the same thing, depending on what company. Here's this one's got something very similar.
You know, the other thing, Chris, if you show illustrations that have loans coming out, there's more disclosures that get printed on the paper because now there's additional risk that's tied to the policy. So if you get an illustration without loans, those disclosures aren't there because you're not illustrating something. So if you add loans to the policy, when you start illustrating that, there's going to be additional disclosures that are very similar. Like, hey, you increase the risk of lapsing your policy if you over leverage. That's crazy.
Wow. So let's talk about some of the calls you have with these clients, because they're having you do these reviews. And folks, like if any of you want to get a review of your policy, even if it's a whole life, listen, I completely understand that what we're talking about with IUL, I'd be so wrong and so just fake if all I did is sit here and say, oh, none of this stuff happens in whole life. But folks, this stuff happens in whole life. It's just whole life doesn't have the rising cost of insurance every year, and it has little guarantees on the contract. But there's hanky panky in whole life too. So we're going to uncover that as well. But like when you're having this call with the client, they see your video, maybe they're watching this video and they want to go to IULexposer.com, book a call to have you review their policy. Like, what are some of the aha moments these clients are having? And maybe they're not aha, maybe they're, something like that son of a, anyway,
Yeah.
take it from there.
When they find out how much cash value is available. Like, 'cause some of these people have had them for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And
How would they not know that?
Because I think whatever they're told in the conversation versus what actually gets submitted on the application is two different things. Because as you know, the more insurance you sell, the more commission is and less cash values in there. So I think they tell them all the catchwords, but the agent also wants to get paid. They tell them you can borrow, because every time we start a dispute process, well, these policies take time to grow value. I'm like, no, I mean that's true, but you also sold them a lot of life insurance. You sold them $1 million policy too, with only $500 a month. Like there was never going to be cash value. And their excuse is always, well, we just put enough room in case they wanted to put more. That's every single time. I kid you not, Chris.
So let's overbuild the death benefit, charge the client more money. So hopefully they can put more money in down the line.
But as of right now, they can't, right? So there's not going to be any cash value.
We forbid that. Just so everybody knows, we forbid that type of action. With all my mentors that take calls, we are not allowed to overbuild a policy for a future hope. You build it for today, for what the client can do today, for what's comfortable today. We don't know what the future holds. And that is not even compliant to do it that way. The insurance companies hate that. I bet you any money, these IUL the insurance companies behind it hate that as well.
Yeah. So that's what I see. So they're thinking that they have, they're $15,000 in, and we call them, they got nothing in surrender value, nothing, zero, or 2,000. I just got before this guy put in 33,000. That's $5,000. He goes, yeah, I'm ready to, do the infinite banking. I'm like, with $5,000? Like, what are you going to possibly buy, bro? Where's this real estate that you're thinking of buying with $5,000? Because if you find, I want to get in on that. I want to get on the $5,000 deposit. I don't know what they're thinking, but it's unfortunate because they're thinking, hey, I got 33,000, especially, and this is where I don't think they understand is that you get about, like you said, 80% on that IUL. That's really good. To have year one. That's amazing, by the way, because I've never seen that.
It is. Now, let me go one step further. This one right here, this is a buddy of mine he's one of the good IUL guys out there. He's also does whole life, but he uses these. So I asked him to design me for me, and this is based on my age when I was 46. I said, design me the best performing IUL you can, to which you sent it over. Year one, you put in 12,000. Year one, you have cash surrender value of 8,106, which is 67.55%. My accumulation value is 9,959, and the hypothetical rate was 6.25. And I got his permission to do this and use this. And I went down through and I tried figuring out at what point at 6.25 would this thing even start to remotely break even. And it was year 5, cash on cash. It was year 9 on cumulative, assuming a perfect performance. We always get 6.25. Now, I know you've been in this for a while, and hopefully the audience knows this. Like, how many of you have ever seen the S&P 500 or any market portfolio earn the same return for 6 to 9 years? Zero. It can't happen. Oh, but the average, and I'm just going to let you run with this because I know this is you love this. The average return has been this over this period of time. So that's how we came up with 6.25. Average return means absolute nothing. Nothing, especially like now they're telling them to take loans from it. Please dissect that for me because you're the expert, not me. I get pissed off, really pissed off when I hear shit like this.
So, I mean, going back, that's a lot of cash value actually. So
that's why I'm using good ones here. Like we can get into some of yours too, and we can show people what they're really getting. This was designed by a friend who literally did the best he could and that was 67.5. I mean, yeah, I'm glad you're impressed.
Shout out to that guy, because that's not what I see. Right. So out of all the policy reviews, maybe 10 of them were properly look like that, and not even that good. Like, this stuff is not sold. So the biggest criticism I get is, oh, you're just showing all the, not properly structured policies. I'm like, I'm not cherry picking. This is what comes across the DM here, man. It's all I'm doing. So that's a lot of cash value. So kind of finishing up that story, people think that they put in 30 grand, or in this case, 12 grand, that they have 12 grand available. I'm like, oh, buddy, no, there's a surrender value. You only get 90% of that, right? So 90% of the 8 grand is what you have available. Going back on the average return, I think it's very important that people understand that they're tracking the S&P 500 through an IUL in an inferior way. So like when I'm investing, I'm participating in the S&P 500 total return that has dividends reinvested, which beefs up that return. Versus the IUL, it's tracking the S&P 500 price return, which is without dividends. So when people think they're investing in the S&P 500, we're tracking it two different ways. The S&P 500 has a lower compound annual growth rate over a duration of time versus the total return, which really creates a massive opportunity cost long range. So like if we look at the annual growth rate with the S&P 500 total return, it's about 10.5. Okay. Well, the price return's about 7. So they're tracking a 7%, right, return. So the issue here, Chris, I don't know what the cap rate is on that. What's the cap rate right now? Like if you were to look at the S&P 500 cap rate, it's probably double digits.
I'll try to find it for you.
Yeah. If you tell me the name of the company, I'll know exactly where it is.
It's PAC.
Okay, so right now on that S&P 500, it's about 10%, almost 10, it's like 10.5 maybe. Okay. Well, PAC Life has horrible rate integrity, which means after about year 5, they reduce that cap rate to about 8%, 7%.
Wait. Hold on a second. No. They can't reduce cap rates.
No,
They can't.
They will. Not can, they will.
I just had this discussion. I was just in an insurance company, and they have a company that does IULs, and they actually said that they have almost every year changed the cap rate.
Yeah, they will. It's not if they are going to change the cap rate, but I think this is where I'm going to say it. This is where the scam is, bro. This is where it really takes advantage of the inbox, is because PAC Life will sell this exact same block of, they'll sell this exact same policy, rename it, call it the PAC Life 4, whatever you want to call it, right? But all the PAC Life 3 IULs have an 8%, 7% cap rate, but the brand new product will have 10.5. So it's like they robbed Peter to pay Paul. That's literally what's happening. They're lowering all the cap rates for older blocks of business.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's what they do. And because nobody.
Why would they do that? Is it because their costs are going up on those derivatives they're buying?
Yeah.
Surprise. More and more people start buying IULs. The insurance companies have to go out and buy more and more derivatives to basically do what they do with the account and the index. So therefore, of course, supply and demand, the cost goes up. Do you see anything changing in the future? Is it going to get cheaper?
No. Hey, so now we're going really into the weeds. The general fund is only going to do about 5% because it tracks the fixed market, right? So, I mean, bonds or the fixed market has been kind of going down. That's why dividend rates have been coming down. But then the cost of these options have been going up. So that's why they had to come up with these volatility controlled indexes to control the options budget or the options cost. These uncapped with 500% participation, those things are so full of it, man. If anybody is selling you a proprietary index, you're set up for failure.
Your real estate business lives and dies by the network and the connections that you make. I mean, after all, your network, well, it's your net worth. That's what you always heard, right? If that's an area where you desire improvement, well, Private Money Club, it's for you. PMC saves you precious time and money by bringing the real estate world, well, right to you, right in the palm of your hand. So get in on the action, like so many others have, by going to privatemoneyclub.com and sign up.
I don't even know what that means. It means you get a bunch of Harvard grads, you put them in a closet, you turn the lights on dim, and you say, I want you to go through every single thing in the marketplace. I want you to build a portfolio that has the absolute best returns, and I want you to do it all based on past performance, because that's all you got. That's what they do, folks. It is literally like, it's not even real. It'd be like going out and buying a cherry pie and like the cherries aren't cherries. They're not even close to a cherry. Like everything is completely fake. And when you bite into it, then you know how fake it is. But until then, man, it looks damn good.
Yeah, and all they're super attractive. If you ever look at the IUL illustration, those volatility controlled indexes illustrate the highest. So on paper, they looked at like the insurance company wants you as an untrained agent to choose the one, and by default, I'm not too sure if you can get contracted with some of these guys, right? So I'm contracted with all these companies, and I can build out every single one of these companies, Chris.
Smart. So you can actually go in and build the illustration. Oh man.
That's why I want to learn how to find that much cash value, right? I go, maybe I don't really know this IUL stuff as good as this guy because I want to learn that. Every single one of the defaulted indexes, Chris, guess which ones they are for every company?
Always the highest returning ones. Just taking a
The
stab.
volatility, the volatility ones. Every single.
Imagine that.
And so you as an untrained agent, you don't know any better. You don't know any better. Okay, and you just sell it. Oh, look, you're gonna have $1 million, but it's off a synthetic index that will never happen. In fact, most of these synthetic indexes are getting sued. There's a bunch of laws because they don't return anything. You could give it 1,000% participation rate. It wouldn't matter because what's 1,000% participation rate on 1% return? Does it matter? Does it matter?
That's a good
A
point.
lot of people don't understand. Yeah, it's these things. So I like to like you were on the live the other day.
I was.
And I go, you gave up the guarantee, and I'm not advocating for whole life, but and then I said this, I go, you gave up all the guarantees in a whole life policy to go chase this return that is gonna leave you broke on a lapsed policy because you're trying to chase this extra 0.5% return. You're better off just buying the whole life. If that's what you were looking for, at least you know it's gonna be there.
I've had a couple clients, not a bunch, but a couple clients, one in particular that had an unbelievably well-designed policy that we did for him. And it was super mature. And I got replacement paperwork. I called the guy up and, I knew him and I'm talking sense into him. And I sent him all the mathematics behind it. He wouldn't give me the IUL illustration, but I gave him all the mathematics and he said, no, this guy said that this thing's guaranteed to make this return. My buddy's got one of these and he's done phenomenal over the last couple of years. So I don't know. I don't know who to believe, but like this one definitely is performing better. I said, you're being sold a bag of lies. It's not going to. He ended up replacing that whole life and going with an IUL. I haven't heard from him since, but it saddens me because his policy was so good. Like literally in the black, cruising every year, every dollar he put in, he's making more than he could take out more than what he put in. It was just sad to see it go. But this happens every day. Every single day, because listen, we are just plain out outnumbered. I don't care, you do term and we do whole life. Like we're outnumbered, but I don't even know what the metric is, probably 10-1, with IUL agents versus what we're doing.
And a lot of them are these, big IMOs, the 3-letter IMOs. I do a lot of recruiting.
Multi-level marketing companies.
But those are the ones that are just, they're taking advantage of people. The only policies that I don't replace, and I'm not saying because I'm talking to you, because I say this very openly, are whole life policies that are past about 7-8 years, right? Maybe 10, because it wouldn't make sense to do that, especially on these paid up ones. Like I just did a review. He has a 20-pay whole life, and he's 16 years in. I'm like, that would be wrong of me to do that, to replace that. I'm like, keep it. You got 4 years left. You have life insurance for the rest of your life. Open up a Roth IRA though. Like you have to invest, because at that point, and there's another YouTube influencer that's really big. I won't say his name.
The old guy or the young guy? That's all I need to know.
He's a young dude. He's a young dude. Very young, very passive. He brings up a lot of other people and talks, and he likes to have the conversations. So I came across a Penn Mutual policy, well designed, and I told him, I think you should keep this. Didn't replace it, man. Right? I didn't replace it. And I don't know that guy. I don't know. I look at that. He's about 4 years into it. He's almost at that break even. He hasn't taken any loans out. I go, you do know you need to start using this money, because this is not going to get you the return you're looking for. The whole purpose of you doing this infinite banking is to have this safe money, get the return elsewhere, recapitalize the policy, rinse and repeat, however you decide to do that.
keyword, recapitalize the policy. All these guys that are doing the IUL stuff, saying they're doing IBC or saying they're using it with IBC, they're just selling a policy. They're never ever teaching the process because they're not teaching recapture the money. None of them are. They're saying IBC and it does this and use it to buy cars and this and they're not teaching the most important thing you just said is the recapturing of the money to repay the loan to the insurance company. That is a must, like a must. You have to do that. And that's not what they're doing. They're using this sexy concept that's got a little bit of street cred called IBC to sell you literally a bag of lies, a policy, so that they can get paid a commission. And then a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, they're out of the business. They couldn't make it because it's a hard business. And then all of a sudden you're stuck with a policy that absolutely probably is not going to perform the way that it's supposed to. And there's nothing you can do about it.
1000% agree. 1000% agree. So yeah, I feel bad for your client that just threw his future away.
Yeah, it was a big policy too. Nonetheless, so like when people get on the phones with you, like, and you find that there's a material issue, you're actually advocating for them, going in and fighting for them, and you've gotten over $1 million. Talk a little bit about that, because that's fascinating. And even I, doing this that long, didn't know that was really even possible unless there was like a fraud, a material fraud, or something to that extent.
So, I'm going to say some stuff. So if you're listening to this, hopefully you can stop doing this. This is my contribution back to the insurance industry.
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot of agents listening to this.
Yeah, good. They should. Okay, so whenever you start making insurance no longer insurance, if you start comparing, that's a red flag. That's a hardcore red flag, and you are responsible for that. And it makes it so much easier to get the money back. You're gonna laugh at this, or maybe it's probably gonna piss you off more. So I'm doing this policy review, and the guy that built out my whole marketing strategy, right? He's building it out. I asked him, "How did you get this IUL? What did you do?" He goes, "Well, because he's an SEO. That's what he's a marketer, correct? He's a marketer." He goes, "Well, I built out these websites for this guy, and I'm just learning. I never heard of infinite banking. I never heard of policy loans. I never heard of any of this stuff. And it's an IUL. So he's building out this whole IUL, and it's a sweet website. Okay. The name of the website is Roth IUL. It's literally the name of the website.
Oh.
Roth IUL. And if you go take a look at it, I don't know if it's still up, right? Because my point being is the fact that you're comparing insurance with investing, they don't even have securities license or anything like that. That's how it's so easy to get this money back, because they're making comparisons. If it's not on the illustration, you can't use anything else to sell the product. You can't do that. You can't write on. It's kind of like a prospectus when you're a securities license. You can't do anything to the prospectus. You can't highlight anything on the prospectus. You can't change anything because the prospectus is there, done. The only thing you could probably do is staple your business card to it. That's it. The minute you start touching it, violation. Well, the insurance is no different. It's not as strict to spin around. They're gonna
there's an IUL guy whose name I can't mention, but you could figure it out pretty easily. He literally has a website that has a whole bunch of material on it that none of it is compliant, not even close. Basically disregards the whole point that what you are selling is life insurance. Calls it something totally different. Everything that would be life insurance, he renames as something else. And I went to somebody in the industry, somebody that would know, and I said, what would this mean, if somebody were to do this and they were to get caught for having this? And they instantly said, and this is the carrier, they said we would basically we would strip their license, we would ban them from doing any business with us forever. And then I wanted to say, well, how come this person is still operating? And it just blows my mind that like literally years go by before this stuff gets uncovered, and hundreds, if not maybe thousands of these policies are sold in a completely false way that does not ever meet any compliance guidelines. And literally if they get caught, they're out of the business, but they don't care because they're just trying to pump and dump. They're trying to make a bunch of money. And then they know that they have to know, Jonathan, that this party's going to end. They have to know that. Because I don't know how, unless the IMOs are that terrible, that they're not explaining compliance or doing anything to monitor compliance. Like there's just no way these guys don't know that this is going to end badly for them.
That hopefully makes you happy. Of those $1 million, 300,000 it came from that person.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, yeah.
They
Even call it life insurance. Yeah, love his little name, the little 3 letters. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so they told him to liquidate his 401k, pay a $90,000 tax on the 401k, put it into that.
Oh my
It's
God.
gonna outperform anything. So my point being, all we had to go do is do that, show that, and then the carrier, boom, like instant, right? No questions asked. So that's what.
But yet that carrier still lets that person write for them. Because I know he could only write with one carrier now, but yeah, he's still writing. Funny how
a lot of business. I get a lot of that from that particular agent.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, you're never going to learn your lesson. These are easy refunds for me. Easy, because I already have all the data stored already. I'm like, hey, this is what it is. 60, 90 days later, we get the money back. So
yeah, that person has replaced a lot of our business, but not replaced it the right way. He's gone to him and said, hey, surrender your policy. And then once you get the money, we'll put the money into the IUL, or he doesn't even call it an IUL. He calls it something else, but nonetheless, like, this industry, like he's literally bypassing the replacement guidelines. And in New York, I'm in New York, so I'm the most compliant state that there is when it comes to replacement. Right. Thank God. Like we have a full Reg 60, like that.
Yeah, Reg 60, yes.
That would probably be jail time in New York. But some of these other states, like it's kind of just a slap on the hand. But he's literally bypassing this entire this entire replacement process that is put in place state by state to protect the client from exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, that's crazy. And when I figured out, I don't even hold a license in New York. I'm like, all right, I'm staying out of this, man. No, I'm not going to New York.
Well, we don't do any marketing in New York either. I just live here.
Okay. Yeah.
But I built an entire career, like when I was an advisor, and all I did was New York business. So I'm very familiar with it, but it is like the one state that is extremely strict on that stuff.
Yeah. That's unfortunate. So that's how we get the refunds is these guys are out there. It's really easy to help people because the agents don't know how to sell life insurance without without comparing it to something else. They have to degrade all these other financial products to make this IUL look better because they're not trained well enough to teach people how this cash value product works. So they have to knock down a 401k, they have to knock down a Roth IRA, they have to knock down fearmonger, tell why whole life is terrible, like term life, everything on how this is superior, and say how the Rockefellers did this. I'm like, unless they resurrected.
IULs went around during the Rockefellers, exactly. The Rothschilds, the Morgans, and the Stanleys, the McDonald's. Like, I'm sorry, like IULs weren't even a thing back then. So how were they using IULs? It's the older guy who's always out there telling that story. Oh, life insurance and used by banks for bully. Dude, IULs didn't exist when all that started and when it was done. But yet you're using the names like they used IULs when an IUL didn't even exist anywhere. It wasn't even an idea.
Yep. I agree. So I always have them like, you'll say just about anything to sell this stuff. Anything. You'll show just about anything. If they could use 10% on that IUL illustrate, they would. They would totally use 10%. They'll use anything.
And why would anyone, if they're saving for retirement, this is just nothing to do with this, but this is a completely logical question. Why would any halfway smart person that isn't phased out of putting money into a Roth decide to put money into an IUL instead of putting it into a Roth? Like, I just can't make the connection. I guess maybe if they wanted the death benefit and they potentially wanted tax-free growth, but like that's never really the case. They're just told that this is better because it's got a downside protection. But like the Roth is always 1000% of the time going to be the option. And it's just like, I love what you said, where you were like, they're always comparing it to something else. It's better than this. It's better than that. It's better than this. It's like, I always say whole life is a terrible place to put your money if you're just going to leave it in the whole life, because it's not this or that. Because people are always like, oh, I'd be better off putting it in real estate, better off putting it in the S&P. And I said, yeah, if you compare putting it in this or putting it in that, you're right. But it's this and that. Like if you put it in the whole life, then take it out and invest it into real estate over time, it is better to have the policy because you're going to earn twice. But that isn't what these guys are doing. These guys are out there literally selling, oh, this is better than the Roth. Never is it better than the Roth. They're different animals, they're different vehicles, they're different purposes. Like it's life insurance, but it's not sold as life insurance.
And this is where I had to take an educational standpoint, because I caught myself early on comparing equities to fixed income, like whole life, and I go, okay, I'm being misleading now. So I'll never ever compare whole life insurance or any kind of fixed product to equities or investing, because that's not what it's for. Like I mentioned earlier, I told that gentleman, I go, this is not going to get you to retirement, dude. Like you need to use the money. You have to invest this stuff. Like take the loan out, whatever your risk tolerance is. Mentioned you in your website. I'm like, that's an idea. Go at your own risk. But that's where the risk lays. That like you have this guaranteed income or a guaranteed pool of money that's never going to lose. The risk is outside. You still got to take some level of risk and all that to get the return, because the return isn't inside the whole life policy. The return is outside. And
That is correct.
rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And I think once people truly understand, there's no such thing as a riskless investment. We're being smart about it. Okay, we're taking calculated risk and all that. So that's where they're selling this IUL is it's better than everything. It does better than whole life because it's guaranteed. Shut up. No, it's not.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about term insurance. Like I have been around term. I've sold probably tens of millions, maybe even more in the 20 some years I've been doing this of term insurance. I own term. I have a $1 million policy that I took out a while ago to protect my mortgage. Okay. And then I just recently, actually end of last year, took out a $5 million term policy in my company to protect the risk of me dying and my company dying with me, so that it would basically be continuation. That was a key man structure. So I love term, and all of my mentors, agents is what most people would know them, are trained to talk about convertible term insurance, because if we're on a phone with somebody, we're always talking death benefit, the importance of it. And if they can't afford to do the whole life the way they want, we're always talking to them about convertible term insurance. So get into this, get your family protected. And then down the line, if you want to convert it, great. We can convert up to this death benefit for the first 10 years, which gives you a nice long runway, protects your insurability, but yet most importantly, protects your family if something should happen to you. Like you are on that side and you've made an entire career around term insurance. So tell me a little bit about your philosophy around term insurance, and some of the things that you would tell a client that's looking at term as a forever thing. Like how do you handle that in yours? Because I know a lot of people that sell term, they never really, like, it's for a term of time. And then there will be a time where you no longer have that coverage, which is kind of where the whole life thing came in. I mean, when insurance companies created whole life, it was for the whole life. But when it was unaffordable, they created term for temporary times or periods of time to protect things. Your car loan, your student loans, your mortgage, your business during the time that you think you're going to operate it. Like perfect product for that protection, because it is pure protection at a very affordable price.
Yeah. So I'm with that convertible term. I'm with that philosophy 1,000%. Where I see a lot of people is they can't even get out of credit card debt. So you can't even handle your high interest credit card debt, but you want to start taking policy loans. Like, we got to get you correct. We got to get you aligned first with money. So if you can't knock this out, because it all starts with discipline. Like it takes the exact same amount of discipline to put $500, $800 into a whole life policy. You could still do that with the Roth IRA and term. You still have to do it. You still have to do that. It's the same effort, discipline, consistency, all that. Because you miss one of those things, it kind of throws everything off. So I come across a lot of people that are just heavily in debt. Their student loans and credit cards and all that. Just high interest credit card debt, where my thing is teaching them how to become debt free. And I know you have a good video on using the infinite banking concept to get debt free and all that. So that's what I see. But saving for retirement, and like you have, term insurance, I feel is just a great way to cover yourself, build these disciplines throughout your life. Because if you can save $25 a month, you can save $25 a week, $25 a day. Just start with a number, get consistent with that. Because you already kind of shown that you're not disciplined with debt. You're not disciplined with it because you leave balances on, especially with these outstanding loans. Like if you leave an outstanding loan at any kind of policy, it goes against you. So I think if you say this a lot, a responsible banker.
Got to be an honest, responsible banker. That's the only way the
Responsible.
infinite banking concept works. Otherwise, you're stealing from your bank. And what happens when any business, if you steal from any business, the business eventually goes out of business. Your bank will go out of business. Your private banking system, if you just keep taking loans and never repay it. I had somebody the other day would be like, we were talking to one of my mentors. Well, Chris said that you never have to pay the loans back. Please find one video out of my 1,300 videos where I've ever said that, because I've never said that. You were smoking something good at that time when you heard me say that. And you're like, I was probably dancing naked too on the video as well. I mean, hey, at least you were having some fun.
That's another misconception I get, that, oh, I never have to pay back the loans. I'm like, you're not lying. You don't have to, but that's not going to be a very good scenario.
Factual. But if you don't, your system's going to fail you, because you IBC will never fail anybody. You will fail IBC. That's the whole thing. Math will never lie, but you can screw math up. It's no different. Like, it's all about this discipline that you're talking about with buy term and invest in a Roth. Like, it's all discipline, just like it is with us. But like, that builds that discipline. And I agree with you. Like, when we deal with so many clients, like just like you, and most of them are in debt. Like, people are always like, well, how come all your videos, how come you have so many videos just talking about debt in cars? I'm like, because most everybody has debt and everybody needs a car. Not everybody's investing in real estate. Not everybody's buying multifamily properties, and not everybody's investing money because they're so buried in debt. So we got to start there, because I don't want anyone to ever come in, start investing money when they got debt. That's the simplest, easiest return you're ever going to make on your money, and it's guaranteed return. If you're paying 20% on a credit card and you pay that credit card off, and then you make the same payment you were making to the credit card back to your bank account. Let's just do a bank account. Whatever you paid that credit card, 20, 25, 30, 29.99% is the return you just paid yourself. Like, where does that not make logical effing sense? Like, right. That's the best return you're ever going to get. You're not going to get 29% or 20% or 15% in the S&P every single year, but you certainly will paying your debt off. Your car, if it's 7%, and you pay your car off and you pay the same payment back to yourself, to a checking account, you get that return you're paying on the car, which right now most of them are 6, 7%. That's a damn good return. Your IUL that has all these costs and all the stuff that you were sold, like, they're showing you a lower return than what your stupid right. car payoff would pay you. Like, where have we gone off the rails so badly here?
Well, so that's where I'm at with that. Especially, want to get out of debt, start getting in some fundamentals, and whether they do it with infinite banking and taking loans, and you're disciplined with that, paying it back and recapitalizing the policy, is just a different way, is using debt to create wealth. And I understand that concept, especially when I come across the very few infinite banking policies that I come across. I come across some Chris Kirkpatrick policies that hey, those are good, man. They're decent. Okay, I get it. I'm not going to replace them, bro. Okay, but that's just not what's being sold. Flat honest, right? They don't want to cash out for a year or 2, 3 years. I'm like, there's no way you're going to be an infinite bank, right? You got to wait 10 years for this stuff to actually capital. Yeah, you can't, right? So, I'm a believer of debt, right? I just don't use life insurance. My risk tolerance a little more. I know it goes against the belief of the Nelson Nash Institute, right? I get it, right? So I'm a more believer using my brokerage account as far as.
Wait, what goes against the belief of it? The Nelson Nash?
Anything other than whole life.
Oh yeah. Well, specifically IULs. So it says anything other than whole life, but it doesn't say paying your debt off using a bank account with the same process called the infinite banking concept without the whole life. I've done, I think now 10, maybe 12 videos teaching the infinite banking concept. And I'm sure they'd get mad at me for doing this without the whole life, because you can't get a whole life in New Zealand. You can't get a whole life in, Zimbabwe. But I got people calling me all the time saying, hey, how do we do the infinite banking? I'm like, you can't. And I did 2 videos, one that just released on mine, how to use the infinite banking concept outside of North America, which means without the whole life. And you know what we use? A checking account. And you know how it works? Fucking awesome. It works amazing, because you know what? The process that Nelson Nash came up with, taking back the banking functions in your life, that process works no matter how you do it, because it's just a process. But yet we've all made it about a product. And I get it. Everybody, it's a tangible thing, and the product over time does make it more efficient. But what I'm trying to say is paying debt off with a checking account, or paying debt off with a whole life, they're both the same darn thing if you apply the same process. One over the long haul, you've got a death benefit for your family, where in the checking account, you do not. That's your win. And maybe a little bit of, compounding makes it so you got some more money than you would in the checking account. But we literally did this, Jonathan. I take, this, but I am so passionate about the mathematics behind everything and the mathematics behind the infinite banking concept. And I am not against the buy term invest the difference, but we had to do a white paper because the buy term invest the difference people attack us saying their method is better. So we were like, okay, is it better mathematically? Well,
Right.
let's prove it. So I gave this to you. Feel free to read it. Let me know what you think. But if you like it, share it. But if not, like, this is available to everybody. It's buy term invest the difference. It is agnostic. It is not making a case for IBC or whole life or term. It is simply mathematically showing you a whole bunch of scenarios. Super big, easy to understand. We run it with bank accounts first. We show side by side, same dollars, same age, everything. And we basically break down all the different scenarios. Here's buy term invest the difference. And we use the same age, we use all the same metrics. So it's apple for apple. And we even use a design that's not what we would do. Like, I think we just use a 60-40 in this, just to show, like, we're not talking about like a highly engineered whole life. It's just a decent one. And we run them all the way through. And what you will find is there's pros and cons to both, no matter what scenario you look at. So really what it comes down to is, realistically, what are you after in this period of time? And is the death benefit important for the rest of your life? So when you look at the math, you'll very clearly see it. And that's why we did it. We just wanted to point out, like, one isn't better than the other. One is better than the other for the right person with the right scenario. That is the only difference. That is the only difference. So I think everybody will like that. If any of you want that, in the comments below, just put white paper. And what we'll do is we'll put a comment up that'll allow you to get this white paper on this episode. And we'll also put the IULexposer.com and how you book a call with Jonathan and his team right up in the description. But Jonathan, what else could we do now to talk about this whole thing? Because we've kind of come full circle now. So where should we go?
I think kind of when you're implementing any strategy, it's discipline. If you're so one of the things I want to talk to you about, especially with that white, and I haven't read it, so I'm going to read it. I'm really excited about that.
An easy read.
IBC didn't fail you. I love that. You failed IBC because the concept works, as far as leveraging debt and making money work in two places. I mean, that's how every elite person who avoids paying high taxes, or we look at Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, you think they're using money, they're leveraging their stock portfolio to a securities-backed line of credit, and that's how they're funding their lifestyle. So some form of debt. I'm a big believer that everybody's have to use some form of debt to get ahead in their lifetime, at least once. You also did a great video on how to use your 401k for the IBC concept, or was it a 401k? Or was it a HELOC?
I did them both. I did one with the HELOC, and then I did one with the 401k. I love the 401k one.
And you're
capped to 50 grand or whatever, 50% or 50 grand, so whatever's greater.
And you did one with that lady,
Christy Van?
With
Velocity.
Mm-hmm. That's great stuff. Like, and I know she's new to the whole life infinite banking.
She is.
So it's all kind of come full circle. So my point being is, infinite banking didn't fail you. You failed infinite banking. Same thing with buy term invest the difference. Investing the difference didn't fail you. You failed investing the difference, because there's a study behind it that the average investor, if the S&P 500 has returned about 10%, okay, the average investor has only gotten 3, right? And it's because of human behavior. Oh yeah, I'm throwing out all the beans here. Right? The average investor, because they're not educated, when the market tanks, like in March, when it went down like 15%, most people sold, and they realized the loss, and they didn't get their money back. And because 4 or 5, 6 weeks later, it ramped up. I think the year-to-date return right now is like 10.5% today, or something. I know yesterday was like that. But they screwed that return because they didn't stay invested. Kind of like when you didn't pay your loan back to your IUL or your whole life policy, you weren't responsible. You weren't disciplined enough. So IBC didn't fail you. You failed IBC. Investing the difference didn't fail you. You failed at investing the difference because You stopped growing, you stopped listening, you stopped being an honest, responsible person to the system. Because if you're deciding to do infinite banking, there are some things that you have to do consistently over a long period of time. Same thing with investing the difference.
You know,
Slow, put the money in.
Jonathan, there's an amazing, I'm sure you could find it pretty easily. It's pretty long. It's a full write-up from the fund manager that ran Fidelity's Magellan Fund, which if you know anything about that, you'd probably be a little older like I am, folks, if you know about the Magellan Fund. But it arguably was one of the best performing funds of all time. Maybe not up to today's standards, but back then. And the fund manager comes on and he talks about how they were able to every year beat the indexes, and how every year the fund outperformed, its peers. And he explained their philosophy and everything on how they did it. But then in there, he also said, we did great. Our investors did horrible. He said, we had the best returns, but if we looked at our investors' returns that were investing in the Magellan, they underperformed almost every single peer fund and every single fund, because the fund did so well that when it did well, people were happy. But then when the fund didn't do well, people bailed out and then they bought back in when it was doing well. And he explains the psychology behind that, which I thought was fascinating, and how it literally almost drove him mad that he was able to do so well with his team and this fund. But yet when he actually got the reports of what the actual end user, the investor buying the Magellan Fund returns, what they got, it literally almost made him ill. And
Yeah.
the Magellan Fund, I believe it closed or whatever. I mean, there's more. I don't remember the whole article, but it was just fascinating. We talked about the psychology that you just mentioned on how people invest money. And you know what? Magellan Fund didn't underperform them. The Magellan Fund didn't fail them. They failed themselves. The buy term invest the difference strategy didn't fail anybody. They failed the system. The IBC system didn't fail anybody. They failed to perform. They failed to be an honest banker. But the one true that we're talking about that we started with and that we're going to end with is IUL failed you. You didn't fail it. That's
Right.
see how we just came full circle, folks. That wasn't planned. That just naturally just happened. The IUL failed you. That's why he's able to recover. That's why he's able to have a case with this. These other concepts, they don't fail. You fell. Okay. IUL, you didn't fail buying the IUL. You were destined to fail because that product failed you.
And the crazy part is you could have done everything right, Chris. You could have done everything right in the IUL, and it's
Never missed a payment. I made everyone, overfunded it like I was supposed to.
you could have done everything right, and the chances of it delivering for you the way we know all these other things will deliver, so slim, so slim, so slim. So it's unfortunate, Chris.
This has been so good, folks. Like, if any of you want to hear more about this, if you want me to bring Jonathan, the IUL Exposer, onto the Wealth webinar or our different platforms, do some YouTube content, put down below yes, and I'll know what that means. And we're going to continue to keep doing more of this, because listen, someone's got to do this hard work. Like, somebody's got to go out there and do what's right for the people that others are harming. And that's all there is to it. So we're not trying to sit there and poo-poo this, but we're trying to do what's right and bring the truth out. And you know what? We only touch the surface. I know there was one point where everything we talked about, that people listening were just like, what in the hell are they talking about? But that's the point. None of you understand what you're buying. None of you understand what the contract says. You don't even understand how it works, but yet you're still doing it. Here's some good advice. Invest in things that you know, like, and understand, and your success will be far better just by investing in things you know, like, and understand. If you don't know, like, and understand how every bit of this IUL works, don't invest in it. And they're going to say it's not an investment, but it's based on investment principles, which, Jonathan, final thing I want to say, and I said this just the other day to the CEO of one of these insurance companies. I said, how is it that these people selling this still don't need to be licensed, when literally, like, no matter how you look at it, they are selling an investment. They are selling an investment to its fullest level. But
Yeah.
yet you don't have to be security licensed. When
You know
does
what?
that change?
Oh man, because this goes away, and it's such a profit center.
I know it does.
Why don't you see VUL sold? Because of the
Because you got to be a registered rep.
and that's additional licensing. That's 3 exams. You got to get an SIE, a 6 and 63. Most people can't even pass the life license, even as easy as that is. Imagine 3 extra exams. So that's why, going back to the 4,000 policy reviews, I think maybe 4 or 5 or more VULs. So you don't see this stuff. If they made you to have maybe a Series 65 or a 6 or a 7, some sort of security licensing, the amount, like overnight, this thing would drop by like 90%. It'll drop by 90%.
Yep.
It'll never happen, man. And I'm an advocate. I think if you're going to be selling, comparing it, talking about rates of return, you need to have, when you had your securities license, Chris, okay, you had to be so compliant with what you were saying, right? Because you're under strict, or same thing with, and that's the whole reason why I gave up my securities license, is because FINRA was down my throat, right? I didn't mention anything about a RA. I give the impression that you can do something. Gotta give them a perspective. I'm like, this is too much. I don't care.
Yep.
People need to hear, because people are buying this illustration. They're buying the illustration. They're buying the illustration 100%. You put a whole life illustration versus an IUL illustration, what's going to look sexier? And people buy with their eyes. They're buying with their eyes. They buy whatever has the bigger number. And even with IUL to IUL, you'll take IUL company A, IUL company B. Okay, which one has the most at the end? I want that one. That's how it is. I kid you not, man. That's how this stuff is being sold. So if they required some sort of extra licensing, like a securities license, 90% of these sales tomorrow, Monday morning, half the industry is gone.
Well, that day probably will happen, folks. And if you know anything about security licenses, like our registered investment advisory, PMC Wealth, which is filed with the SEC, we are only Series 65, which means we are bound by fiduciary duties, which means if we don't do what's right for the client, bad things happen to us. I'm not licensed anymore. I never will be licensed again, but I am, I basically created the idea for this different kind of RIA. So everything he just said with those licenses is true. You put the licenses in, you require IULs to be sold by registered reps, even just the registered reps, Series 63 and 6 and 63, say it the right way here. Then all the hanky-panky almost comes to a screeching halt. But lobbying is a powerful thing. And when there's that much money, very difficult to stop the ship. But that day, I'm sure, will come down the line as soon as the markets are off of this crazy longest bull run in history. That's going to be the drop of the hammer. That's going to be the first domino. When that happens and the markets turn, these all start to get exposed. It's like, when the old saying, when the tide goes out, we find out who's swimming naked. And unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of naked people running around.
That's right. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you so much. So folks, real quick, I'm just going to wrap this episode. If you're interested in getting with Jonathan, just go to IUL Exposer, exposer.com. And what was the other place you said they can find you on there?
Yeah, just my Instagram handles is Life Insurance Refunds, both on TikTok and on Instagram. So you can go there, or IULexposer.com, just like that, and see if we can help you out. Appreciate you guys.
Love it. Thanks everybody for joining us for this episode. Hopefully you learned something, and hopefully it helped you change your perspective on how things really work. Until the next episode, have a good evening. We'll see you then.